Okay, YouTubers, this is part one of a two-part series on the Russian composer Dmitri Shostakovich. This part explains my relationship with Shostakovich, and part two, I will play his famous waltz number 2. In the early 1970s, Shostakovich came to the United States for evaluation and treatment of his neurological condition. His chief complaint was that his right hand was becoming weak and atrophic, and he could no longer play the piano with that hand. The State Department and various other people, including Brezhnev, asked me to take care of Shostakovich, and I did. I admitted him to the Building 10 of the National Institutes of Health, which was the clinical center. And at that time, Shostakovich came with a KGB man. And I was not, even though I was Shostakovich's physician, unable to talk directly with my patient. I had to first talk to the KGB man, and then the KGB man would talk to Shostakovich, and Shostakovich would talk to the KGB, and the KGB would tell me the answer to my question. So it took over 4 hours to get a history from Shostakovich. When I asked the reason I could not talk to Shostakovich directly, I was told that Shostakovich was politically naive and he might say something wrong. It was a good idea that they silenced Shostakovich because he had a lot to say about totalitarian regimes. He hated Stalin and he hated Brezhnev. He said, in order to tell a joke, you have to go into the men's room, flush the toilet, and whisper the joke to your friend's ear. Shostakovich complained that they would turn off the water or the heat at his apartment if he didn't do as Stalin or Brezhnev directed. His interesting story was about his examination on political grounds. He was asked to explain to a committee of 3 people the political and economic differences between Chopin and Liszt. And when I heard this, I laughed so much I fell off my chair. And it turned out that during the examination, Shostakovich couldn't stop laughing. And they had to carry him out of the room. And he failed the exam. And he had to spend some time playing the piano in movie theaters. Now, if you don't believe all of this is true, then you should read Shostakovich's book, which he dictated and which was smuggled out of the Soviet Union. This will teach you a lesson about what it's like to live under a dictator. Anyway, the evaluation showed that Shostakovich had compression of his nerve roots as they came out of his cervical spine. And the indication for that was decompression by surgery. the Soviets had sent him with the diagnosis of chronic polio, which, of course, Shostakovich did not have. We don't even recognize chronic polio as a disease. Polio is an acute illness and not a chronic one. Anyway, we proved that Shostakovich had compression of nerve roots in the neck with a myelogram. And when I reported to Brezhnev our evaluation, I was told that this was impossible and that the Soviet neurologists could not have made such an error. And I was advised to get other consultants on Shostakovich's case, and I did. I got Daniel Drachman, who is a professor of neurology at Johns Hopkins, and I got Guy McCann, who is chairman of the Department of Neurology at Johns Hopkins. And the two of them worked on Shostakovich's case for 3 days. They called in a lot of other people to consult on the case, and they came up with the conclusion that my diagnosis was correct and that Shostakovich needed an operation to decompress the nerve roots in his neck. But Dan Drachman told me that it would be a bad idea to do the operation here in America in case something went wrong, because the Soviets could then claim we injured their famous composer. And so I made a mistake by sending Shostakovich back to Moscow with a letter advising that they do the operation. And in return, Brezhnev sent a letter saying that the Soviet neurologists now agreed with my diagnosis that Shostakovich had nerve root compressions that were injuring the muscles and the nerves that go to his hand. But they thought he also had chronic polio. And anyway, it was not possible to perform that operation safely in the Soviet Union. And so Shostakovich languished for another 2 years and eventually died of lung cancer. So that's the introduction to the waltz number 2, which will be played in part 2 of this YouTube series. And I advise you to, if you don't believe what happened to Shostakovich, you might consider reading his autobiography.